What's up, everyone, and welcome to ClearTalk. Okay, in this video, we're going to be going over the idea right now that has pretty much got concerned over a lot of America, and that is the question of um, are we under a constitutional crisis? Now, this is something that's being floated by a lot of people on from Democrats and a lot of people on the left, um, concerned about the actions that are being taken by the Trump administration and Elon and all the agencies and everything. What we just previously just talked about, and they're concerned about the legalities of it and whether it's constitutional or not, and if so, or because of all these things that are happening, if they are all unconstitutional, are we looking at a constitutional crisis? And so I'm going to go through that. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about what it's to me, what it appears that the Trump administration is doing. I'm going to make comparisons, some of which you may think are controversial or you may not agree with or you think are, lunacy or whatever. But it's quite starking, the comparisons. And then, but overall, it's just, what's my opinion on all of this? And do I think that because of all of these different things, could we potentially be on a constitutional crisis? Are we at a point in time where the Constitution basically is being ignored, and this administration is trying to basically take power without the acceptance of the Constitution. So, anyways, thank you for being here. Consider subscribing, like, share, comment. I'm sorry, my mind. I'm trying to think through this and how I really want to go about doing this video. This is the one that's taken me some time to really think through. And so it could be long. It could be a long video. Obviously, you looked at the time when you clicked on it. If it is, sorry, I guess, but it could be a long video. So just hang with me and hear all my points out. Thank you for joining me, though. Consider subscribing, like, share, comment, all that good stuff. Check out my other channels if you want. JMD Drummer, JMD Play, Discord there, one-time donation, QR, JMD Nation, Patreon, $3 a month. You know the drill. If you can, if you can help the channels, if you can help me, and support the channels and what I'm doing here on all of them, I'd very much appreciate it. But you don't have to, obviously, but any support you do give, whether it's just a subscription or or not subscription, but subscribing, liking, sharing, whatever the case, I'm very much appreciative of any of it. Even commenting, going, I enjoy the comments. I reply most of the time. So yeah, thank you very much, though, and let's get on to our discussion. So the big question is, like I said, what is going on with this, with everything? What's going on here? It has been, talked about that we have what's being kind of deemed as like this shock and awe idea or flooding the zone idea that the administration is doing, just spitting out so many things, executive order after executive order, like wildfire. I mean, just hitting it day after day after day after day. It's kind of hard to keep up with this. What we've previously talked about in other videos. It's just hitting you so hard that you don't. It's hard to keep up, right? Trying to hard to distinguish all the different things. It's like as soon as you or see one article about something and you're trying to wrap your brain around that one. Suddenly, the next day or even within the same day, you're seeing an article about something else and trying to, okay, well, shit, what are they talking about here? And it's hard sometimes to even really get into the weeds of these different things and trying to understand them. If and hopefully that's the type of person you are. Um, uh, and that can be hard, very very much so. And instead of somebody who just, which a lot of the country appears to do sometimes, just completely accept it and don't really even look into it and just rah rah yay go, Trump, um, or go Elon or whatever, um, and not really truly getting into it and trying to understand what's going on and whether it's actually a good thing or not a good thing, or questionable on whether it's a good thing. um, so it is very hard, right? Flooding the zone, everything. This is the type of tactic whenever um, you're wanting to overburden the system, overburden the psyche of your opponents, or people that aren't completely on board or whatever, to make it so overwhelming that you don't know how to attack back. So it kind of gives you this space and reign of time that you can do what you want to do, and you don't really have a whole lot of backlash, or people are kind of hit in this sort of shock moment where they don't know what to do. There's so much taken in, uh, uh, just like somebody, physically in shock over, an event or something, and they're just like stunned and they're just there. They don't know how to react, don't know where to do, where to go next, whatever. That's the idea. Um, so in doing this, we've had the executive order after executive order after executive order, doing all these things that we previously talked about with Project 2025. Um, this is something we've talked about. It was been warned about all before the election, and all before his presidency, that this is what they were trying to go through and trying to do. And it, even if it wasn't necessarily Trump himself, which he made his arguments that he had no idea what was in it and no clue what it was about, but yet he also at the same time didn't like some stuff that he's that was in it. So it's like, okay, do you not know it or do you know it? What's your, you're kind of conflicting yourself here. But even if he would, even if he had his reservations or wasn't, in the know, because it's not like the dude read, the Project 2025. I mean, clearly, he didn't. Maybe a bullet point list of a couple of things that they were like, hey, this is what was in here, a sentence of maybe 4 or 5 words to try to sum up every section or something, um, that he could easily read, within 2 minutes. Um, uh, he probably didn't know anything else other than that. Very likely. I mean, but it was something that the far right Republicans, people that institutions and groups that are wanting to do the just most extreme right wing conservative plans and uh, uh, policies and stuff like that to implement things that they've been wanting to implement for decades in a lot of cases. Um, it was just something they do with every administration, potential administration coming in, to place down in the desk, hey, this is some things we want done. Can you please do as much of this as possible? We knew it was going. That's what they were going to do, and it has been already shown that you have at least 2/3 of executive orders that have been done that directly or at least in some part um, identify or have something to do with Project 2025. So that was clearly the idea and is being implemented. And one of the biggest things was the idea of, of trying to bring in more power to the executive branch. and ignoring uh, the other branches, basically, trying to argue against, you know, Congress, arguing against that to bring about as much power to the executive branch as possible. Um, Knocking down the agency, the admin agencies, and stuff like that. Getting rid of people, in those agencies, clearing it out, and putting in your own people, loyalists and stuff, over all these agencies and stuff, to make sure that they align with you and won't, we see this happening all across. This is what they've been doing since inauguration. Um, you know, Either asking people to retire or firing them right on the spot, or putting them on administrative leave, or whatever the case, to eliminate as many people as possible. Um, and so yeah, it's all there. They've been clearly doing it. Um, uh, so we know that it's in play, and or at least part of what they're doing is about that. Now, when it comes to the Constitution, uh, we know, if you've ever read the Constitution, I have. I've read through the Constitution, the amendments, and all, um, and which is basically the outline for our country and our government, and how things are supposed to work and run, and uh, coalesce with each other, as far as the different branches, the checks and balances, how things are to be, uh, argued for and against, and who has what, and where, how things flow, and the order of which things are discussed and implemented, and laws are written, and the whole it's all there. And then, of course, all the amendments that we've had since the original, you know, uh, writing of it, to adjust for things that have changed, the public opinion that has changed over time. Uh, you know, all that we've got. What was it? 27 amendments to um, the uh, the original constitutional articles. So these this is something that's widely known, and accepted, and like a part of our, is a part of being an American, that we have this, and this keeps us in check. It keeps everybody in check, prevents authoritarianism, and things to anybody to have too much power, and to give power more or less to the people, um, and not the few, or a few. Um, that's the idea. That was the original idea, and that's supposed to be the idea of our country, and how we are fundamentally built upon, the fundamentals that we are built upon. Uh, and from the first day, immediately when the WhiteHouse.gov website went live for the new administration, it was quickly noticed that the um, the page that typically has the Constitution, albeit maybe a summary, or like a simplified understanding of each section, or whatever, or fully drawn out, whatever the case, um, had been eliminated, had been deleted. And in questioning this, the people, representative of the administration or whatever in the site, just said, "Oh, it's just temporarily gone, for us to make changes, and or as we're building this site and whatnot, and it'll be coming back." Um, but we are still 3 weeks now from then, and it's still not there. Um, Other noticeable things is that your Spanish version of the site is not there, along with archived pages of previous presidents, and uh, you know, dedicated to them. None of those are there. All cleaned, wiped. Um, Along with a few other, typically, you know, uh, pages dealing with different things that are not there. It's just basically a stripped down version of a site that just lists the main characters of the administration, and then you have your news section and article section, basically just listing out all their executive orders, all their presidential articles and or proposals or whatever, that basically everything he's been doing. That's pretty much it. It's a bare bone website that all your main any kind of memorial thing, or like I said, the Constitution itself has been removed. Um, and yes, they've made the argument that it was just a part of our revamping the website, and it's just temporarily deleted, whatever. But like I said, it's still 3 weeks out, and it's not there. Um, and I just found it really interesting that like that, you know, is not there. There's no, if you were wanting to know how the administration considered themselves and how they were going to implement and to the country their whatever you it should be through, and no matter whatever you're trying to implement, or how you're trying to bring about your personal change, your administration's change to the country, it should be through the Constitution. It should be through your interpretation of the Constitution. But yet there's nothing there. Um, and like I said, the Spanish version and stuff like that, which we know that the biggest things that Trump has ran on, and what he's going on, especially right now, is immigration. And what has hit the most people that are that speak Spanish, or some type of um, you know some type of something, some other language other than English, damn near, pretty much. But I mean, it feels, it just comes off as like that type of attack, that type of or just suppression, or however you want to view it, that they don't want to acknowledge um, as a part of this country. And so when you look at all these different things and the actions that they're taking, that when it comes to, say, the Treasury, and trying to block things that are already been appropriated, that have already been accepted by Congress, accepted and signed off on to pay for things, before Trump even got in there. There was this stuff that was put through by the Biden administration, Congress, and of course signed by him, to be paid for in the period of time that was overlapping Trump coming in, but nonetheless, uh, that period of quarter or whatever of time for things to be paid, things that we pay out, uh, and that's the process that once constitutionally, Congress is the purse. Congress designates appropriations for how we pay for things, and where it's going, how it's going, when it's going, all that kind of stuff. And the president basically just, it's to sign it. He's to sign it. I mean, they can veto, but even in that case, from my understanding, they've got 10 days to sign it, or veto, whichever one, or and if he doesn't answer within those 10 days, he can just ignore it and it just go through, um, anyways. Or if he does send it back, then Congress then will try to take in account any kind of corrections or things that he may not completely agree with. But nonetheless, as long as Congress whatever they agree back to, and pass, that's it. There's only one round back through, from my understanding, and he has to sign it regardless, and it has to be implemented. Because, like I said, they have that. They are the sole power for that. The executive branch is not supposed to have any kind of unilateral, like, uh, power to just ignore that and say, I don't care what you've appropriated. Um, we're not going to pay for that. And especially not way after the fact when, you weren't even the one that signed that anyways. And that's basically what he was doing there. He was coming in and being like, okay, whatever y'all did previously, we're not going through with. We don't agree to, and we're not going to allow that to be paid out right now. We're going to look back over this stuff, and we're going to decide whether or not we want to pay for it or we don't want to, or don't want to pay for it. And that is fundamentally unconstitutional. It's illegal. Um, and that's what's the practice is being done right now. When this stuff has already been appropriated, it's already been settled to be paid out in whatever form of aid or services that it's supposed to handle. Um, and that's what's throwing all the confusion and people not understanding what's happening and whether they're going to get paid or not. Um, I mean, even with the foreign aid stuff, uh, or I think is either through maybe U.S. aid or whatever, that was certain things that were supposed to go to like hunger associations that deal with hunger in other countries or whatnot for people, um, that was already been established, was supposed to have been sent out, and it's stuff that is purchased from U.S. farmers. I mean, there's and U.S. farmers were waiting for they've done their work to to collect up this stuff, whether it was soybean, corn, or whatever, and they've got this stuff stored, ready to the idea is that they've done the work to prepare it and everything for it to be used and go to humanitarian aid, things, and they're supposed to be paid by our government for their for doing it, and that was the holdup, is that there was a certain date that it was supposed to have been, the transaction was supposed to happen, government pays for it, picks up, goes on, does the thing. But that didn't happen. That was blocked. It was stopped. And farmers all across the United States were, you know, uh, questioning and arguing, hey, we've got this stuff here. It's sitting here ready to go out. And if you don't, you haven't paid us. We're waiting for this transaction to happen. This stuff is just sitting here rotting, or could potentially rot. And this is wasteful. What are you doing? You're stopping this process that happens all the time. I mean, that kind of stuff like that. It's simple. These kinds of things that are not being thought through when this stuff is happening, and it's just simply unconstitutional. So that's the question at hand. There is whether or not, when thinking about all these different things, are we in a crisis over this? Is the administration not accepting or ignoring its constitutional obligations to the nation, to us as citizens, and uh, and that's the question at hand. Or are they trying to completely, avert the Constitution and do what they want to do? So then you have to question, okay, well then what are you doing? How is this, for one, right, legal, and you know what's your idea? What is your plans then? If you're not trying to follow the Constitution and what we've established for our country and how it's supposed to run, and you're going to do whatever you want, effectively trying to dismantle the government and, you know, how how we function based in our Constitution. Um, then what are you doing? What are you gonna do? What's the ends? What's the what means do we have here? Uh, uh, where are you gonna go with this? How far are you gonna go? You know, um, and that's where I want to start talking about comparisons. Um, I recently started really, I've started trying to understand the actions in Germany years ago and things that how things went down. Um, and a lot of the actions that were taken, and I know this argument is like, oh hell, here he goes. He's going into this argument of you know comparisons to Hitler. Um, the reality was is that it didn't take but 53 days for Hitler to completely dismantle the German government and how it functioned. And the interesting thing was that he is famous for that. He was using the Constitution to dismantle the Constitution. Uh, he did everything that he did. He did legally through legal means to usurp power from the other parts of government to focus it into the executive branch for him to have full power and do what he wanted. And dismantling all the undertones of that, the other things, the checks and balances in the country at that time, um, and ultimately turning, using his influence and manipulation of the Constitution and the laws and his understanding of how the government ran, using it against itself so that he could completely take power, using goons, you know, that he had established to dismantle things in the courts, um, and through the legal means, and then ultimately, once he gained that power, he initially then attacks his political opponents and everybody that was against him, which was the president that he took power from, and that whole group. His whole purpose was he was using the guise of socialism, a socialist agenda, to fight against a communist potential communist takeover of the country, but using authoritarian like means, and then and promising that if he was to give him 4 years of a basically a dictatorship, and he would fix the country. And he used, you know, that rule, that idea to gain power and to gain favor, against the potential of a communist takeover, just to gain power. And then, like I said, he then attacks, arrests, and in some cases, I even think kills some of his political opponents. And then once he was done with all that and getting rid of all the people that would go against him, then he turned to immigrants. And in that case was the Jews. Um, Starting with the encampments and trying to group them all in. Then ultimately, we know what happened from there. But the idea was all for him to take full power, separate people by, racial issues, dividing the country, taking care of all his opponents so that he had no backlash, nothing to come against him. I mean, these were all the actions that he took, and it only took him 53 days to make that happen. To gain the power needed to make all those things happen by using the kind of strategies that the Trump administration is using right now. Shock and awe, flood the zone kind of things, throwing stuff so fast, doing things so quickly that people couldn't get behind, couldn't get effectively against it. And then using his charismatic ways to persuade a group of the country that it was in their best interest. And the one thing is that he had a full army. He had a full blown military army behind him to enforce these things, and in some cases most certainly did enforce them at initially, but he also was under the understanding that military might and force couldn't be the only way that he was to gain the power. He had to do it by the legal means, or it would look illegitimate. He was smart enough to understand that it would have to go through the legal means for it to look, at least in perspective or to perception, that he, did this the right way and through the legal means of the democracy, and that it, to gain this, and so that there was nothing wrong with it. There was nothing illegal about it. And many of these different things that they did, we are seeing almost exact what's happening here with the Trump administration. It's startling, honestly, the comparisons with them taking power, flooding everything with all the executive orders, all this change, trying to divide people, immediately going after, he's done, sued, arrested, or fired, rather, people that were in the FBI to the attorneys generals and things like that were in the either against the January 6th stuff or against did the cases against him, or had some sort of connection with the cases against him. So he's attacking all his political rivals, quote unquote, for revenge. And at the same time, he's starting with the immigration. And in our case, it's Hispanic immigrants for the most part, but really anybody almost, whether it's Haitian, Cuban, Venezuelan, you name it. They're making a thing. Anybody, any immigrant, just get them out of the country. And if we're taking, they're whatting detention centers and stuff that we have already were already full, and over, full in some cases. So now you have arguments for, like I said, Guantanamo Bay. You have other prison systems and stuff that are arguing for building facilities and things like that to put people. I mean, you have El Salvador even, requesting for us to even send our own criminals there to be housed, which is astonishingly like crazy in my opinion. But all this is being done to split and separate people, separate society. The us against them kind of mentality, and to keep us engaged in that and all these things, and fearful for some part of the society, and cheerful for the others, and to keep that support and that separation and that fear, while they're doing all these other things of dismantling agencies, and trying to break up all these different parts of the government, to try to coalesce and bring as much power to the executive as they can, and to the point where even arguing for um uh completely ignoring Congress, now arguing to completely ignore judges. We had JD Vance do that the other day. Well, if we have judges that are going against us, then we just maybe we just ignore them, and we do what we want to do anyways. Elon backing that. Um, if you're not looking at all this and seeing what's happening, and not being concerned, not questioning, not being worrisome of just how far are they willing to go. I mean, at the prayer service the other day, Trump once again talked about the possibility of running again, and whether he could. I'm telling you, they're flirting with it. They're flirting with trying to hold power, no matter the cost. They're flirting and arguing against the legitimacy or the any kind of ability for Congress, making arguments against their justice system, all in the name of having full executive power and reign. My friends, that's a dictatorship. That's an authoritarian takeover of our system. In the hands of the richest man in the world, a CEO, gaining access and deciding on how we spend things or not spend things or whatever the case, and under the management of Donald Trump. Thinking he's a mob boss, thinking he's a king. And wanting everybody to do what he wants. This is what's happening. And I can't stress enough how much, as I said in the previous video, you must stay informed. Must keep an eye on what's going on. Question it. and give your concerns, even if you think that some parts of it you actually may, find an agreement with. Understand that even if you are okay with it, even if you are openly okay and argue for a complete takeover of our government and for Trump to be all ruling power supreme, how long can that stay in power? How long can that control really honestly hold? And if that could be a concern for you, the possibility of the exact opposite of that somehow finding its way through, you know, uh, people that are against it, and somehow at some point, albeit 5, 10 years down the road or whatever the case, you know, if they were to somehow hold power for say another 4 years or whatever, I mean, at some point, power switching by whatever means, you've done set the precedent for that power to be supreme. This was originally all started when the Supreme Court gave damn near complete immunity to the presidential position to Donald for in the in for Donald Trump. Complete immunity on whatever they do, as long as they consider it a presidential act. That's where it all really started. That opened up the window for all of these actions being taken on and being done, for them to make the argument that, well, it's presidential action, so we can do what we want. It gave them the ability to, even like now, well, if the judges don't like it, then what are they going to do about it? We'll do it anyways. We don't care what Congress says. We're going to stop this, or we're going to control this, or we're going to, doesn't matter. You should be afraid even allowing this. That's the point in our checks and balances, is that it prevents either extreme from taking full control in any way and doing quote unquote damage to our democracy or our constitution in the way, in the foundation that our country was built on. So this should even be concerning for you, even if you think substantively that you're, fundamentally okay with this, or would be okay with Trump being a supreme. But what about after Trump? Do you really want, I mean, have you thought past that? This is not what you want. I promise you. This is not what you want. And it's time to recognize that before it is ultimately too late. And right now, we can all only hope that the check and balances that we do have still in place, our judiciaries, judges that are trying to make, pauses, enforcements and things like that, our Congress trying to make their arguments and whatnot, that they somehow hold the administration in check. But honestly, at this point, what really is stopping them from saying, fuck y'all, we'll do what we want? And then that's when I have to ask all you MAGA, all you loyalists, is this really what you want? Think about that for a second. Is this really what you want? So I'm not so sure. Anyways, thank you very much for joining me. Let me know what you think. Um, and I'm gonna keep talking about this stuff. I'm gonna keep keeping up with all the different things that they're doing, trying to keep you informed. And if you like what I'm doing here and you like how I'm presenting it to you, you like what I'm discussing, you like how I'm talking about it, because I'm trying to be as fair as possible. I mean, honestly, then welcome. Consider subscribing, like, share, all that good stuff. Thank you very much for joining me. Until next time, peace. Clear Talk.